Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Fowler, and welcome to Grace Farms Earth Day 2021 celebration. We are here because we are going to have an amazing panel of thought leaders in planting with purpose. We have, I'll be introducing them later, and we'll be showing presentations for each of them, but we're going to have Penn Marchael from the Ecological Landscape Alliance and Pennington Gray. We're also going to have Brendan and Alexi Coffey from Steward, and it's very exciting. We're going to be celebrating what we can all do in our backyards on Earth Day and in our own environments, whether it's urban or suburban. We're going to be celebrating that. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of Earth Day before we get further into the micro of what we can all do. Grace Farms celebrates Earth Day because the original inspiration, one of the original inspirations for our place here was to save the last large remaining open space in New Canaan, Connecticut. And so this property, this incredible property, our 80-acre preserve here at Grace Farms, was actually up for development. There were over something like 10 to 14 huge mansions that were already permitted here for this land, and our founders saw the opportunity to preserve a beautiful landscape and to create Grace Farms. So that's always been really close to our heart here, and that's why we celebrate Earth Day as sort of the celebratory spring awakening, but also we celebrate preserving and restoring the land that our wonderful river building and our wonderful foundation is based at. So as far as Earth Day's history, let me go a little back. We are now, it's the 51st. Today is the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. 1970 was the first Earth Day. And, I want to talk a little bit about what inspired Earth Day. It was things like Rachel Carson, the incredible Rachel Carson, wrote the book Silent Spring, which was, it's a very profound concept, but the idea of a silent spring was that because we were using DDT and all these pesticides, and birds were actually being heavily affected, their eggs were thinning, and the birds were not being born. So she envisioned this idea that spring came and there were no birds calling. And this was just, it's such a profound and scary thought, because, when spring comes, we are so blown away by the birds and everything, all the life coming back to the land. So that was a profound, idea. And it brought, light to where our society was based, where we were based, and how bad the air pollution had gotten, the water pollution had gotten, how, we were in dire straits back then. And so this started, Rachel Carson and Earth Day in 1970 started the modern environmental movement. And here we are 51 years later. But I want to talk a little bit about, much of what we hear today. Grace Farms is a hopeful place. We believe in a hopeful future. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we hear every day, especially on Earth Day. For instance, today we hear a lot about sort of how bad the future could be with climate change, for instance, how bad the future could be with, with endangered species and with loss of biodiversity. We hear about that every day. And in some ways, it's very doomsday, what we hear. The science, we believe 100% in the science, but at the same time, our messaging needs to be a message of hope. And so I just want to go back a little bit because, when the Clean Air Act was created, that was 1970, when the Clean Water Act, when the Endangered Species Act was created, when the EPA was created. That was created, it wasn't a political thing back then. It was created under a Republican president, under Richard Nixon. He signed all of those bills into law in the early 70s, right when Earth Day happened. And I just want to say those laws created major change. They've been revolutionary. We have had massive amounts of clean air. We've cleaned up our air. We've cleaned up our water. The EPA has been very effective. For instance, does anybody remember the problem of acid rain? It seemed very existential back when it was a huge problem in the 80s. Guess what? We have actually addressed acid rain. We we regulated and we were able to cut down on acid rain significantly. The ozone hole, if you all remember that, that was a major existential threat. We addressed that. We banned chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, and now look at this. The ozone hole is actually closing. So there has been we have made major strides, and that's what I wanted to share with you, because we have some existential threats. We have carbon dioxide. That's a major problem. But we know how to regulate and reduce air pollutants. So what I hope, and after seeing today President Biden's conference on and announcements on climate change, there's a lot of exciting work to be done, and there is a hopeful future ahead of us where we can thrive economically and from a healthy environment. We can thrive as well as Mother Nature. So I wanted just to share that with you all as sort of the macro view of where we are right now. And then I want to talk about sort of the micro view about how every one of us can make positive change in our own environment and for the greater natural world as a whole. So I'm going to share with you a presentation about what we believe in and what we do here at Grace Farms. So this is called our Restoring Wild. This is called our Restoring Wild program. And let me share with you this. Here we go. Okay, great. So Restoring Wild, this is something that we've been working on for a number of years, and it's based on what we've done here at Grace Farms. When we were able to purchase the land here and preserve it, it was mainly horse pasture, and we were able, because it was an equestrian center before, but we were able to restore wild back to the landscape. And that's what we're talking about today, is sort of how you and how we can restore a wild environment, a natural environment where wildlife can thrive, where biodiversity can thrive, as well as humans. So here's what we've established here at Grace Farms. We saw the pasture grass as an opportunity to actually completely redo the landscape. And we worked with one of our speakers today, Penn Marchael, was part of the Larry Weiner Associates. Our founders had that vision of bringing the land back to the natural environment. And, we start with native plants. Okay, native plants are incredible because they evolved here in the landscape. So they're fully adapted to this region. That's the beauty of native plants. And guess what they bring back to the landscape? When you plant native plants and native flowering plants, for instance, you bring back pollinators. Pollinators, I have seen, are one of the most amazing benefits of bringing back the land to native plants and to a native meadow, for instance, which we'll talk a lot about coming up in the program. When I first came here in 2016, it was incredible. When spring came, all the flowering plants that we had planted and the meadows just bloomed. And guess what? The landscape came to life. I mean, every kind of beneficial bird, butterfly, bee, beneficial insects, they all came back to the land. And it was this huge explosion of life, from kestrel falcons to native bees to butterflies, etc. And these are called pollinators. Okay, so pollinators are incredibly important. And that's what we've celebrated pollinators here at Grace Farms. And it's all based on what we're talking about, planting with a purpose. That's what today's conversation is about. So I want to share with you our Restoring Wild program. We have restored 70% of our landscape to native meadows. That 70% of our 80 acres has been restored. We have incredible wetlands. We have incredible wetlands. We have 3 large ponds, and we have a beautiful forest that surrounds our property and our fields. What's beautiful about that is, we recently did a carbon. We recently counted all the species of trees on our land. For instance, we have over 50 types of species of tree on our landscape, and we also have 2,000 trees here. Now, I just want to give a little bit about climate change and how incredible that is. Just keeping the trees on our landscape and planting trees, which we have done, we have actually been able to. So check this out, 2,000 trees averaging about 48 to 50 pounds of carbon absorbed each tree per year. That's 100,000 pounds of carbon every year that have been absorbed just by our trees alone, not to mention our incredible meadows. So this is just a way to talk about the incredible benefits of restoring the land and preserving the trees, the forests, and then restoring the native habitat. Pollinators are vital to creating and maintaining habitats and ecosystems with many animals that rely on food and shelter. Over 75% of our food that we eat, the crops that we eat, is pollinated by pollinators, bees, birds, butterflies. 1 out of every 3 bites of food is made possible by pollinators. And actually, from an economic standpoint, we have over $217 billion in ecological services are provided by bees, birds, butterflies, bats, and beneficial insects. So protecting pollinators, what can you do? And that's where our whole movement of planting with purpose comes in. By landscaping with native plants, we can attract more native pollinators and provide host plants for some species of pollinators. So it's those incredible flowers that come out in the flowering trees in the early spring. That's where the dogwoods and all our flowering trees and the tulip poplars, the tulip trees, they provide habitat for pollinators. But then in the late spring, early summer, that's when our meadows start thriving and all the life comes back to the land. So what you can do is intentionally plant with purpose to bring back pollinators. So here are the benefits of planting pollinator-friendly habitat. These are the 4, just a few of the benefits. Pollinator habitat creation. Native flowers and grasses function much like natural systems with diverse plants providing food and shelter for host birds, butterflies, and beneficial insects. So because the native plants have evolved here, the birds, butterflies, and insects have also evolved to those plants. So it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship. And that's how all the life starts to thrive again. If we reduce, here's the other benefit of native plants. Native plants do not need any pesticides. They need no pesticides. They also do not need fertilizers. I mean, this is incredible because they evolved here. They need neither one of those. So now that cuts down on pesticides and chemical fertilizers. So if we look here, once you establish them, there are no need for fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides. And they are also pest resistant because these plants themselves have evolved a way to repel certain insects. So improved air quality. Hey, you know what? Lawn maintenance. They say that lawn maintenance worldwide, and especially in the United States, lawn maintenance and lawn equipment is 5% of our carbon footprint of the United States. I mean, that's insane. So if you plant native plants, you no longer have to use farm equipment, and it can be virtually eliminated. Native plants work much better than traditionally mowed grass, because here's the cool thing. Native plants have roots that are up to 20 feet deep. So it can be a drought. There can be a drought. And by the way, and they don't even need watering. That's the most beautiful thing. So when you have these root systems that are 20 feet deep, that's absorbing carbon, pulling it into the soil and depositing it in the soil. It's just another amazing carbon and climate opportunity to sequester carbon dioxide. And as you will see, they also maintain water. And they will. This is beautiful. So what's the other challenge we have nowadays? We're starting to get water. Water is becoming scarce. Clean water is becoming scarce. So the beauty of native plants is you don't have to water them. That's incredible. So no need for fertilizers, no need for pesticides, no need for watering, and their roots are so deep that if there's a drought, the water is in 20 feet deep. So the plants here thrive. They're beautiful. They've got flowers all over them in the hottest part of summer and the driest part of summer. These are just some of the beautiful benefits of planting native and planting pollinator friendly. So I wanted to share this with you because it's about the plants, and planting the native plants invites the pollinators to come to the land. And then that brings all the other life to the land. That brings the raptors, that brings all the other life to the land. So here's a case study about Grace Farms. We've done to restore our 80-acre preserve in New Canaan. We have over 10 habitats here on our property, from large ponds to wetlands, and all of them are thriving because we've brought them back to their native plant and to their native healthy habitats. Here's a beautiful view of our river building. And when we reopen in the fall, we are inviting everyone to come here and to see our beautiful property that we've been able to preserve and restore to a healthy environment. Obviously, we've got birds. We've got over 100 species of birds that have been confirmed here at Grace Farms. Over 100 species of birds. We're actually a hot spot for birding in Fairfield County. And that's because we planted all the native plants and the beneficial insects are here. You know, here's our 2,000 trees, just a little view of our 2,000 trees we have here at Grace Farms, and our beautiful ponds. You know, we've got fish that thrive in there, and we have we have a cattail pond, which you don't see cattails much anymore. We have beautiful cattails that are native, that are thriving. And this is just another view of our incredible place that we're inviting everybody to come to. And I've shown you this because next we're going to be hearing from Penn Marchael. We're going to be hearing from Penn Marchael. He has been our Meadows expert since before we opened. He has established the Meadows here. And it is incredible the work that he has done and how far we have come since, 2015 when the Meadows were all put in. We have been thriving ever since. So I'm going to invite Penn Marchael he's from Pennington Gray. That's his company. They're doing incredibly well during the pandemic. Guess what? Everybody wanted to invest in their properties and they wanted to invest in natives. So this is wonderful because Penn and his business, as well as who he represents. Penn is on the board of the Ecological Landscape Alliance. So this is really exciting. I want you to hear about the ELA because it's a group of landscapers and landscape architects that are coming together to do what we've done here at Grace Farms. So without further ado, let me invite Penn Marchael to give us his presentation. And then after Penn speaks, we'll be inviting Alexi and Brendan to speak. So go ahead, Penn.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you everybody for being here today on a beautiful Earth Day. Unfortunately, we're not at Grace Farms, which has always been like the kickoff for my spring and the most exciting part of the year. And the last 2 years has been really cold. In fact, last year we had to do it inside. So this is like another version of that where we're stepping back again and we're doing it virtually. But thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be here and a great opportunity to work with Grace and speak with everyone. So I am gonna kick off with my slideshow and get everybody started so that you all see what I see. I'm representing two different entities today. I've been with Grace Farms since the fall of 2014 during construction, when everything started underway and this whole process of converting all these sort of monoculture lands of grasslands that are Eurasian in nature back to native species and restoring the ecology overall, especially after it had been horse pasture. It didn't have a lot of ecological value. And then, of course, we had the construction of the river building, which is a great example of how you can embrace the site conditions and represent that through architecture and experience for visitors and users of all walks of life, which is really awesome. And then, of course, now we're getting to the point where the meadows are stabilizing and become their own functional ecosystem with little to no input or human interaction, which is pretty much the coolest thing you can do. Grace Farms is a fantastic place, and Mark touched on like all my favorite topics. So he sort of, I actually tailored my presentation to be more specific about ELA because I knew that he'd hit on a lot of the points. One of the big points that he grabbed that I love is the carbon aspect of meadows and wildflowers and warm season grasses that exist, specifically at Grace Farms, but also across the continental United States. You can think of them as reverse trees, and all that carbon is being built into the roots, as he said, 20 feet deep. And they're still doing a lot of research in California about how these meadows are acting as carbon sinks and giving some sort of value per acre of meadows on a economical and carbon value. The environmental impact is astronomical. I think the only way to really quantify it and experience it, I can say hundreds of species of this and a 400% increase of wildlife over here. And that all sounds great, but really truly walk out in Grace Farms and you walk into the middle of the meadows and it's like you're hanging out in Times Square in the middle of like thousands of insects just vibrating with energy. It's just the most magical thing. And I think I get goosebumps talking about it, and you'd get goosebumps going there and enjoying that. So a little bit more about the ELA. So the ELA has been around for about 30 years, just about coming up on our 30th anniversary. I sit on the board of directors there, and our mission is really about giving giving people and professionals the tools they need to understand the land that they work on, um, and how to take care of it in a environmentally conscious and safe, enjoyable way. Um, the the thing that makes ELA really amazing is the massive amounts of resources that they've accumulated over this 30 years. There's newsletters that come out on a weekly basis, as well as tons of archived articles and everything like that. It becomes this massive database for anybody that's trying to do something on their land or learn about something about their land or in their backyard or a specific plant. And we have a resource and a library, and it's open for everybody, free to Google and look at. And I think we also have a huge collection of webinars that are accessed and archived for everybody to view at any time of the year. That does require a membership. We do offer memberships for nonprofits, businesses, and individuals alike, as well as professionals. The overall mission for the ELA is to advocate for ecological landscape practices, which is reduced pesticide, reduced input, and doing the right thing overall. The biggest thing is that everyone that interacts with the land is a steward whose actions really are informed by understanding what their environment is and how they can take care of a natural system overall. So the ELA is a really important part of our work because we're bringing it into the professional world and being able to take these practices and actualize on them. A lot of our research and information from ELA is science-based. We work with a lot of different scientists, universities across the country. We invite speakers to come and contribute, but a lot of it comes from individuals that practice landscape and landscape maintenance on a regular basis and care for land in an ecologically appropriate way, with the focus on habitat and restoring natural systems and leaving things the way that you found them. So I think it's about networking and creating a connection with the other people that see the same way and share this information with everybody else and get it out there. So my intro is brief because we have a great conversation to talk about. But feel free to check out ELA, stop by the website, see what they have there. We have tons of awesome offerings. And other than that, if we get further on, all my contact information will be available. But other than that, I'll pass it back off to Mark and we can get everything started.
Thank you, Penn. I appreciate it, man. I will tell you, he's very modest because I've gone out in the meadows with Penn and he knows every single plant by its scientific Latin name. I mean, it blows my mind. But one of the most beautiful parts about what Penn's work has done for our landscape is it's incredible. You walk 10 feet into a meadow, 10 feet in, and the life just thrives. And you can hear all the sounds of nature come flooding back. It's very interesting, just 10 feet in. So Penn, I appreciate your presentation, and we look forward to having a discussion after this. So let me, without further ado, I'm going to bring in our next speakers. So I really am excited to introduce Alexi and Brendan Coffey. Alexi and Brendan are this amazing dynamic duo this blows my mind, but I met them here at Grace Farms. They came here to Grace Farms for years while they were developing their business, and they're very entrepreneurial, and they would come here and they would sit and work and develop their app that they have now released. Brendan and Alexi are incredible. They met at NASA. Okay, so they met at NASA. And they were such geniuses that they came up with this program that is revolutionary. And that's why I'm excited to have them come and speak. They developed what's called Steward. And Steward is an incredible app where, and I'm just going to give the quick description of it, but you can basically scan any environment, inside or outside, any place on the planet, and it can tell you what native plants will grow best there. I mean, it's incredible. So, they've been highlighted on CNN and in the New York Times most recently. And just like Penn's company, during the COVID lockdown, people were either investing in their yards and in their back porches or on their, anywhere that they could invest outside. But also people were so cooped up inside that they started investing in indoor plants. And that's the pretty cool thing, is because Brendan and Alexi rolled out their indoor plant part of their app during COVID, and they've thrived. So without further ado, I'm looking forward to welcoming welcoming Brendan and Alexi. I think they will be coming up on the screen, and there they are. Okay, so Alexi and Brendan, feel free to take it from here and share with us about Steward.
Thank you, and hi everyone. I'm Brendan Coffey.
And I'm Alexi. We're so excited to be celebrating our planet with this wonderful community. And as Mark said, the Grace Farms community has consistently inspired us. It's been in this landscape that we've had some of our most important conversations and breakthroughs. So I'll start by just expressing our gratitude to everyone that's part of this and that makes this possible. Today's topic of planting with purpose is a wonderful way to describe how we can all contribute and grow spaces that are both healthy for us and the wildlife around us. We co-founded Steward with the mission of enabling everyone to confidently grow and bring nature into the spaces we live, work, and play. Our plant app enables you to scan a space and maps the plants that will thrive there. We call these plant maps, and they show you the exact plants that will thrive and how to care for them. Here's an example of indoors, which we launched last year, when we realized that people needed more nature indoors than ever. And we've had a 96% success rate with hundreds of different indoor plant species. Today, we're launching Steward for Outdoors with a focus on native and edible plants. The inspiration for Steward started from the fact that so many people love plants, but most of us, especially in recent generations, have simply forgotten how to grow them. In 2017, Brendan and I had an opportunity to go to NASA Ames Research Center and research technical solutions to climate change. We studied amazing growers, from forest fire restorers in California and coral reef growers in Florida, to incredible backyard growers we found on Reddit, and wise grandmothers that have been growing in the same land for 50 seasons. We even got to watch Penn restore the Meadows from Grace Farms river buildings. What we witnessed is that in each of these incredible growers, they have a sense of what to grow, which took years, even decades, to learn. It was this learned sense that inspired us to leverage technology to enable others to learn in minutes what once took years. We then researched tens of thousands of struggling plants, and what we found surprised us. The main cause of struggling plants has to do with plant placement. If you're like the many people that think they don't have a green thumb, you've likely struggled with plant placement. And you're not alone. This is a simple and preventable issue. In fact, for many plants, the difference of just a few feet could determine whether they struggle or thrive. By getting placement right, even small actions by us can increase the chances of life taking root by hundreds, even thousands of times.
So there are two stories that came to mind that help demonstrate this. And the first story comes from our oceans, and the second we can all replicate in our own backyards or our local parks. 7 years ago, I co-founded Greenwave, an organization that trains fishermen to be restorative ocean farmers. In the late summers, I had the incredible job of diving for blades of kelp, packing them into coolers, and then driving them as quickly as I could to a lab at the University of Connecticut. A single piece of kelp produces millions of spores because the chances of a single fertile spore finding hold of a rock at the perfect depth in the vast spaces of the ocean require so many chances. This is an example of one of nature's go-to strategies to seemingly overproduce. And it's one of the most remarkable opportunities for stewardship. By simply collecting the kelp and briefly creating an environment, an ideal environment, we were able to grow enough seed for millions of feet of kelp. The same is true for the oak tree outside of your window or in your local park. A single oak can produce thousands of acorns. In the wild, most of these will be eaten up and sustain other life. But for oak, all you need do is place an acorn in the right spot at the right time. And with both of these examples, and for so many more, we humans are uniquely able to steward the right time at the right time and place in a way that expedites nature's own abilities to heal. So we've had three key learnings about all of our potential roles as stewards that we'd like to share in hopes that they will inspire you to see your actions as meaningful and full of potential. And I use the word life quite freely here, but you can also think of it in terms of plants. The first learning is that all space has the potential for life. From your kitchen windowsill to your backyard, we have an opportunity to bring nature into these spaces. The second is that all life has specific conditions for growth. And the single most important step we found is to get plants in the right placement. For nearly 90% of plant issues we researched, this was a root cause or had at least a secondary cause. And third is that all life has windows of time when an action by you can result in hundreds or even millions of times more of a chance for life. So this can be especially true for planting with natives and so many other purposeful plants. So knowing when to take action. This is what stewardship is all about.
Partnering with nature is something that we can all do, and it doesn't take much space, time, money, or skill to get started. Now is a wonderful time to start planting, as there's so many native plants that have their ideal planting windows during spring each year. But we also invite you to start planning ahead. This morning, countries around the world recommitted themselves towards moving towards sustainability. As individuals and communities, there's an opportunity to make these same commitments in our own backyards and outdoor spaces. All of us can leave these spaces greener than when we came into them. For us at Steward, we see our contribution as helping equip people with the right tools so that we can all partner with nature. Today, we're starting to support people outdoors. So please check out our new outdoor website. It's free to sign up online, and you'll begin by getting a complimentary assessment of the stewardship potential of your space. Thanks so much, and so excited to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brendan and Alexi. We're so excited to have you both here because, we feel like you sort of came from the Grace Farms think tank. And now seeing, by the way, your plants just behind your head, I know that that's part of your Steward. You probably used your app to create that living wall behind you. Is that correct?
Very much so.
Indeed.
That's awesome. So Penn, why don't you come live back to with us, and we'll just sort of have a conversation between ourselves, and then we'll get into some of the really already we've got some great questions. So, what we find here is people can get pretty intimidated by this idea of planting a meadow. I mean, it is an intimidating question. How do I plant a meadow? I mean, it's a full ecosystem. And I know Penn probably gets this 1,000 times a day because people feel super overwhelmed. But there's also, what I love about this group we have here is you don't have to fully plant a meadow, but you can just plant one, or a group of native plants, native pollinator-friendly flowering plants, and that can completely bring the life back to that. So even on your back porch of your condo, you can plant my favorite plant, which is it's called butterfly milkweed. And this stuff is amazing. It's this incredible flowering plant, and it draws butterflies and bees and birds, and it's just incredible. We have a ton of it here at Grace Farms that Penn planted. Yeah. I think 30,000 plants were put in recently, and they're all thriving. So, Penn, I wanted to ask you, what do you find as far as, if for the average person who wants to start going native, they might be intimidated by, I know that you and your organization can establish a full meadow, but what is your advice to people that might be starting out on planting with purpose and planting native?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And yes, I do. I answer this all the time. So really the way to look at it is that landscape designers and landscape architects and home gardeners and things like that, we go to the garden center and we see like, oh man, this is in bloom, it's beautiful. It's there because it's in bloom and it's beautiful. And in the horticulture industry, it's been bred for those colors, or it's been hand selected from a global selection of plants around the world and brought back to the United States and put into production for that reason. So the first thing is look for alternatives that are native. So you don't have to always go with some sort of imported plant from a different country or a different region of the world that's similar to the US. You can just select a plant that meets the same criteria for conditions and provides habitat. So Mark's favorite Asclepias tuberosa, or the butterfly weed, is actually the host plant for monarchs, and they lay their eggs on it and they grow into caterpillars, and they eat it specifically because the sap, when it's ingested in them, creates a poisonous effect so that the caterpillars don't get eaten by birds, and so they can make more monarchs and complete their life cycle. So the fun thing is, one, find alternatives to your existing plants in your landscape, and find a native alternative and solution to that. And the second one is start to think about what you really want to do with your landscape. If you do want to create a pollinator friendly habitat, or if you want to create an apiary, or if you want an aviary, what's your end goal? And rewilding in general is just about completing full life cycles for animals so that they can all feed off of each other, and it's this continuous thing. So start small, find a native alternative to what you want. You got a hot sun spot, look for a hot sun native and switch it up, and check out Steward.
Absolutely. So yeah, speaking of Steward, people got so isolated during this last year with COVID, and especially in cities. They were so isolated that I think what you've created with the Steward app was able to bring life inside, which we don't think much about that when we're talking about outdoor meadows. But tell us about sort of what people were needing. I mean, you're filling a need, and I think it's really empowered people. I know that the indoor plant industry has gone through the roof, apparently, I've heard. Tell us about what your clients and what people were asking you for that you could provide during these times. And now I know you're going into the outdoor spaces, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think so many of us have been questioning, what do our homes mean to us? What do our spaces mean to us? What's our relationship with nature? So we had a lot of people wanting to create spaces that felt safe and cozy and inspiring. And a lot of the journey we've gone on with people is taking folks that feel like they can't grow, they've struggled with so many plants, and just show them with a few simple steps they can be successful. So we have people they claim they've killed every plant ever and they're now thriving. They have beautiful plants, and they feel as though that they can be part of nature and care for nature. So that's been wonderful to be a bit of joy in people's lives and show up in this way in this time.
Absolutely. So go ahead, Penn. Yeah, go ahead, Penn.
Yeah, my sister-in-law signed up for Steward because I was getting like 60 text messages a day, and she was sending me photos of dead plants, and I was like, you got to stop.
Just sign up for Steward.
Yeah, and
and that's, I think, the fact that you utilize NASA technology. I mean, that's what I love about you too, is you utilize NASA technology in order to create this app. So I can scan inside my apartment near the window, or I can scan out in the field, and it'll tell me all the native plants that will grow there. Is that correct?
Yeah, and basically in that moment, we're trying to do what Penn is doing when he's standing in a field. And we don't do it, you bring in awareness levels that we can't even pick up with sensors. But what we can do is detect the amount of light, the type of soil, the surrounding area, the climate. These kind of things will get you so far in being able to make a recommendation. And it's wild. Every few, like where we're sitting right now in this room, there's very different plants that can sit just another couple feet over here. And it's wild to see how much light can change.
So, and speaking of your website, just because one of our listeners asked, it's Steward Home. Is that correct? Steward Home?
Yeah, Steward Home. And then when it loads, there's a bar at the top, and that will take you directly to the outdoor section.
And the app.
Yeah.
Great.
On the main
So, I mean, it's amazing that we have about 15 more minutes, and we have a ton of questions because we've had such a great turnout for today's event. I just want to say one last thing. Do you all feel, I'll ask one more question to the group, and then we'll go into questions. Do you all have hope for the future, for the natural world, and for us? I mean, that's one thing that instead of the doomsday messaging that we hear all the time, which the science we believe in, but the messaging needs to be hopeful. And I'm wondering, from what you all are seeing, do you have a hopeful vision for the future? And also, I mean, obviously, there's been some big announcements today. I mean, the president is holding a climate conference, a worldwide climate conference. And by the way, this was pretty cool. Penn, I don't know if you know this, but Alexi and Brendan told me that the White House is going to have for the first time a pollinator garden. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yes. Apparently it's not fully announced yet, but it's just really exciting. But do you feel like what we're contributing collectively with this planning for purpose and sort of restoring the natural world, do you have hope for the future?
I'll jump in and say, I have hope. I think it's an interesting question because we as humans and key species in the environment, in the world as a whole, we're fast at destroying and changing the environment. And I think our approach to restoring and putting things back has been very slow.
Yeah.
It needs to be systemic change, but I think we need to be making bigger, faster, broader changes overall.
Absolutely. Brendan, Alexi?
Yeah, and I think so much of the conversation has been about mitigating our impact, reducing our impact. All of these things are absolutely essential. Like I think we're now looking to reduce carbon emissions by 50% from like 15 years ago emissions. This is incredible. But I think, we got to witness, sitting in the river building, how that land around Grace Farms just changed over just a season, and then a second, and then a third. And I think we haven't even started to tap in to the realization that nature will heal herself. But working with stewardship, I think we could accelerate it in a really, really incredible way that maybe we haven't even started to appreciate yet.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that's one of our missions here at Grace Farms. It's not only preserving land and forests, restoring, habitat, but also it's about utilizing nature-based solutions. That's the exciting thing, is nature on a global scale. If we can preserve what exists and protect it from being exploited, and we can restore and allow the areas to grow back, we have a global, they're saying 30% of the carbon emissions globally could be reduced if we just empower Mother Nature to come back. It's very exciting work. So, we'll ask we have some questions here. Let's go ahead and ask a few questions. Here's one from Malia. And it's, does the Steward app apply for plants around the world, or is it specific to the US?
Yeah, so for indoors, we're everywhere in the world, and we're on 6 continents. So if anyone goes to Antarctica, please let us know. But we anywhere for indoors. For outdoors, we're just focused on the United States right now. But if you are somewhere else, please email us, and we'd love to at least point you in the direction of a great organization near you.
Thank you so much. That's exciting that it's worldwide. Here's a really important question that we get all the time here at Grace Farms, and I'm sure you all get as well. I mean, Penn, you must get this from every single client. They ask if the meadows are a problem with ticks. And what I find is fascinating is what I've learned from you, Penn, but these native plants know how to repel. I mean, they actually know these meadows have plants in them that repel insects and repel mice and repel deer. I mean, it's fascinating. But Penn, can you tell us what the science says about ticks? Because obviously Lyme disease is no joke, and we have to be very and by the way, everybody should be doing tick checks and utilizing natural, Natrapel and other types of natural repellents. But go ahead, Penn.
Yeah, 100% agree with Mark. This is every single walk that we do at Grace. It's about the conscientious about ticks that are in the environment, and there are ticks everywhere. And it all comes back to where they come from. And they come from deer and mice, and that are moved through the woods. And the number one vector is Japanese barberry, which is that spiky stuff that's in the woods that fills our thickets because the deer populations have browsed all the natural species and invasive.
And Penn, you're speaking about the entire region, right?
All of, yeah,
Okay.
pretty much the entire Northeast in general, and going down south as well. So the ticks in the meadows, Ticks are moved by deers. They're the major vector. So the ticks are usually on the edges of the meadows and along the edges of the paths, but out 3 feet and 10 feet into the meadow, there's actually a lot less ticks, if not no ticks. And that's because the deer and the animals that move the ticks don't want to go into that thick vegetation. They have no interest in that. They're like us, they want to stay to the paths. So whenever I walk in meadows, I tend to be walking out in the middle of the meadow because I know there's less ticks out there. The other thing to keep in mind is there's other animals because you've created habitat and there's birds there now. Birds eat ticks. There's a lot of birds that eat ticks. There's possums that eat ticks. And if they feel safe in this thicket of a meadow without predators, they're going to come and reduce your tick population overall. So it's about, again, it's about nature and finding that balance and symbiosis again.
Yeah, so thank you for asking that question. I mean, we all need to be aware, but meadows, it turns out, are not filled with ticks. In fact, because people don't go through them and animals don't really love, I mean, deer, when they bite down into some wild mint, they aren't happy about it. It's too strong. So even deer don't go into the meadows really. And we have very few deer here at Grace Farms. Let me share a couple more questions. There's a great, first of all, this question I think is the second question that comes up is, where can I find native plants and where can I find the best native plants for my region? Obviously Steward app can tell you that and Penn can tell you that, but I will say another amazing movement and a partner here that we all work with, I just want to share with people, is called the Pollinator Pathway Movement. And so the website is pollinator-pathway.org. And I got to tell you something, it started out in Fairfield County in a few towns. It's now something like 50 towns. It's now the entire Northeast, and it's moving across the United States. Almost half the United States have pollinator pathways. And what this is native plants that are connected corridors for pollinators and for wildlife. So it's an incredible movement. I hope everybody can get engaged. And if you go to pollinator-pathway.org, to our partners, of which we're one of the pollinator pathways, you can go to their native plants list and find what the best plants are, but also use Steward app. And if you want to establish those plants, use Penn. Let's see where else we have. Anybody else see any good questions that they've noticed? Okay, here we go. One of the things people talk about is invasive species. We do our best to use little to no pesticides or fertilizer or any of that stuff. And we actually now are pesticide free and herbicide free. We are working manually to remove the invasive species here at Grace Farms. And that's what the Pollinator Pathway Movement, I know these guys we're all working towards utilizing as little, if not any, pesticides or chemical fertilizers, et cetera. Okay, let's see. Here's an interesting one. How much buffer should I leave for the property line if I plant natives and my neighbor uses pesticides? That's interesting. Penn, what buffer do you leave between properties?
We plant right up to the edge.
Okay.
Pesticides, no matter what plant it is, it's going to get hit with that pesticide, whether or not there's a buffer there. And I'd rather have more natives than less. So. Okay.
Now you all, Alexi and Brendan, because of your plants are directly either indoor but outdoor, tell us about the exciting rollout of the your outdoor part of the app.
Yeah, I think we're excited to we're kind of looking at how every 5x5 space. So you can start with a really small space, 25 square feet can support a lot of life. And so we kind of look at it from that lens, and yeah, just as you go through the steps of scanning a space and then getting recommendations, really tailoring it to to use terms from this, the purpose that you want to have. There's a lot of benefits for wildlife, and then there may be things for your lifestyle that come into factor. If you're really looking for something lower maintenance that you don't have to worry about, you might make one decision over another, or if you leave for certain times of the year, that may factor in. So trying to pair yourself with nature that's going to work well with your lifestyle as well, so you can continue to keep the benefits.
Well, and that's a really good point. We don't have to have, you don't have to have 40 acres or 70 acres of meadows. You can do a 5x5 plot. and you can, create habitat for all life and make it a healthier place for us and for the pollinators. And by the way, people have asked about voles and all kinds of things. I'll tell you something. We have raptors. The cool thing about Meadows is all of a sudden all the life comes back, including the birds of prey. So they are thriving out here, and we love seeing our hawks and our falcons. We've had osprey, hawks, falcons, eagles flying over and right over and around our property here at Grace Farms. And that's the other thing I'd love to sort of leave this on is, we're living in an exciting time. We have, for the first time, we're not only establishing these native habitat back to the land, and we were starting to address invasive species, but also because, for instance, New England, we actually, this had all been tilled and cut. Every single tree, 90% of New England have been cut and tilled. And that's why we have those rock walls in the forest. The reality is that because the forests have come back, because the native plants are coming back, the wildlife is coming back. So we have, for the first time, wildlife is thriving in these areas like never before. So this is a hopeful message. And by the way, Penn and Alexi and Brendan, because we're talking about not using pesticides and herbicides, that means it doesn't end up in the water sources and in our rivers, and eventually into Long Island Sound, for instance, here in Connecticut. I don't know about you. You guys want to talk about, ecological success stories. Long Island Sound was like a cesspool in the early 80s. Now it has whales back. It has thriving shellfish industry. It has thriving fishing. I mean, it has dolphins, sea turtles, and kelp, which you all started, Brendan. The kelp industry is thriving. I mean, this is an exciting time, and it's all due to the work that Penn and Alexi and all the ELA are doing by removing these pesticides and chemicals from the landscape. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see.
And I'm happy to stick around, Mark, and answer things via text, and I can fill in the answers for everyone too. So don't feel like we're gonna have to answer you.
Okay, well then I appreciate that. We're starting to get towards, we got about 3 more minutes. I'd love to answer 1 or 2 more questions. People have asked, what is the Pollinator Pathway website? It's pollinator-pathway.org. But they're an incredible group. Alexi and Brendan work with them. Penn works with them, and it's just another resource that is fully dedicated to this movement. I'll leave on this note. What's cool about this planting with purpose concept is that it's taking, and I think you all have seen this as well, it's taking all these movements that had begun over the last 20 or 30 years, which were sort of like, pesticide free, fertilizer free, pollinator friendly, all these things, native plant movement, all these organic, all these things were sort of in their silos. And for the first time, this movement brings all of that together, and people's quality of life is thriving. I mean, what do you find from your clients, Penn and Alexi and Brendan? Do you find that once they have this life around them, that they start thriving as well?
Yeah. Oh my God. You nailed it. We have clients that are we're really hesitant at first to snip away at their lawn, but I'm like, this is really unusable space. You're not out here dining. You're not playing soccer on this little patch here. So let's do this in a native meadow garden or a naturalized garden. And they do it. And then flash forward, 4 years, and 40% of their turf is gone. And they've created a path system now instead around their whole property that goes through the meadows. And it's just constant snapshots of what's this? It's blooming now. And check out this bee. Here's this video of this, cicada killer wasp that I found in the ground. And I'm like, the engagement is unbelievable. And it's really about changing your perspective on your landscape. It's not about green grass and white picket fences. It's really about bringing nature closer to your home, so you don't have to travel somewhere to go see it. It's not a spectacle. Yeah. It can be in your backyard.
And then Brendan and Alexi, your clients, you must have really helped them from isolation and being cooped up indoors.
Yeah, I think, Pam, what you're saying, it made me realize as we hear people saying, when you start planting, whether you're bringing nature indoors or planting outdoors, you're becoming a part of that landscape. You look at it differently. When you pass it by in the morning, it's not just some shrub in the corner. It's or your lawn. It's something that and you're a part of it. So Anyway, incredibly beautiful way to live.
Well, okay, everybody. I mean, we're coming up on the end of our program. I know there's a lot of questions, and we're going to collectively answer all the questions, and we'll email answers out to the questions from all the participants. So we will address questions and give you as many resources as we can. But I hope you see behind me, you know, here at Grace Farms, where the land is thriving. I hope it is where you all are as well. I know we have so many people from around the world today. You know, I hope the natural world is thriving around you too. And we invite people to come to Grace Farms. And in fact, everybody on this call, I mean, Brendan, Alexi, and Penn, we're hopefully reopening in fall. That's our plan. And you'll be able to hopefully come and celebrate with us and see the meadows. I mean, September, October, they're incredible times to come to and see the meadows. And hopefully we'll have Alexi and Brendan and Penn coming and speaking and on the meadows walks with us. So we have exciting stuff coming up, and happy Earth Day to everybody. Let's create a hopeful future for humans and for the natural world to thrive alongside each other. And let's work together to create a hopeful world for the planet. So thank you, everybody.